Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. So the invocation prayer that I just sang says that I've come into the world without any bearing. I don't know which way I'm going. I'm not sure where I've come from. And when I come out into this world as a human being, the Vedic scriptures give me some direction, and that is, you have a big opportunity. And that opportunity is to inquire about your highest good. What is the highest aim that you can possibly reach, the highest goal? How to adjust your aim, and there's a process through which one can achieve that. Generally, every process has three divisions, starting with getting information about the goal, or sambandha gyan. What is my relationship with the Supreme? And then there has to be some practice. And then there's an ultimate goal. So first comes knowledge of the relationship. Why am I endeavoring in a certain way? Why am I in this world? And what is my ultimate good? And then there's some practice that one can put into place in one's life. And then there's a measurement of how one's reaching that process. So in Krishna consciousness, all of these are available. That is, there's detailed knowledge about my relationship, our relationship as living entities with the Supreme. And as we talked about on Gaura Purnima, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu especially gave very detailed and valuable information that had not been taught readily in human society for a long time. Very specifically about the different kinds of relationships that we can have with God. And then there's the practices. What things can one actually do on a regular basis in order to move towards that goal? So the first is called sambandha, or knowledge of the relationship. Everyone please say sambandha. Sambandha. And then comes abhideya, you can say. Abhideya. Which means the practice. What are you practicing? And then comes the fruit. The fruit is bhakti, or love for God. So when we talk about sambandha and abhideya, there's a word that is particularly helpful, considering the fact that sometimes it's hard to move forward in one's practice, because there are forces in this world which move against us while we're trying to practice anything, while we're trying to do any discipline. Has anybody ever noticed this? Yes. Or is it just me? What kinds of forces move against you when you decide you're going to take up some discipline? What kind of things oppose you? Pri Kishori?
Your own mind.
What does your mind say? Just out of curiosity.
Maybe this is not what I should do right now. Maybe I can be doing something else.
Okay. You apply yourself to the discipline and your mind wants to go somewhere else? And sometimes the mind doesn't want to do something productive, it wants to do something wholly unproductive. Is that possible? Everyone's smiling. So it may be a way in which the mind operates. And there's ample explanation throughout the Bhakti scriptures of why this happens. The mind is subtle, but it's mechanical nonetheless. And it is affected by things that I've done before. And there are reactions that happen in the mind. So the mind can become disturbed, just like if you throw stones into the water, there will be ripples on the water. If there's wind on the water, there there's little ripples everywhere that you look. It may be hard to see into the water and so forth. So the mind may become disturbed, even by things that I've done previously, not just recently, but also even in previous lives. The mind can become affected by impressions and so forth. So the mind can be an obstacle. What other kinds of forces may work against you when you're trying to work towards your goal? Sleep. Right. How does that happen?
It depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get up early in the morning, then you'll feel extra sleepy. And then the mind will come in and tell you that, getting up early is not good for your health. You should have 8 hours of sleep and so on and so forth. So the mind and sleep, they work in conjunction against.
So, yeah, and sleep can come at other times too, right? Maybe like right in the middle of when you're listening to a class. I've seen this before. Even sometimes you're interested in the class, but the sleep impulse comes in and can drag you away. Yeah, so sleep is a formidable enemy, yes.
Hare Krishna. One of the biggest thing that I see as a hurdle for me is procrastination. Like I always think, okay, I'll do this later, and then eventually I won't be able to catch up.
That's a really good point. Procrastination. Does that word fit with anybody's lifestyle sometimes, procrastination? Sometimes procrastination is a good thing because if you put off sense gratification for another time, delay gratification it's called, then there's some use for it. But generally speaking, when there's something serious to do, some discipline to perform, there may be a way in which the mind says, let's do it another time. And that never comes. Time moves by in chunks. 4 years, 10 years, and you still haven't done it. I discovered in writing a book, which I'm in the midst of, not right now, but every waking moment of my time at home in the last few weeks has been dedicated, besides my sadhana, to, or when I'm procrastinating or sleeping, or toward writing the book. And I noticed that when I was first asked to write this book that I wrote the whole book in my mind. But then when I thought, yeah, it's done. And when I sat down to actually write it, I thought, wow, one paragraph is a lot harder on the page than it is writing. So, it's easier. And I found there are volumes of books about writing, and many of them are about how not to procrastinate, because writers tend to procrastinate. They'll do anything else. They'll go start a world war before they'll sit down. That's actually true. I mean, not with writing, but Hitler was an artist. But rather than do his artwork, he went and started a war. So, yes, procrastination is definitely a formidable enemy, yes.
Not having taste.
Not having taste. You try to do something, but you don't have a taste for it. So that makes it hard to move forward.
I don't need to do right now. I'm still too young to do that.
Still too young? Kind of procrastination. I'll put it off till I'm older, yeah.
Your own discipline.
Your own discipline means?
Like how you disciplining your mind to do something,
You mean like you don't have the discipline yet, so you haven't learned that skill or you don't have the momentum of the discipline? Yes.
So sometimes, like you've said earlier also, no actual real reason, but we just can't do it.
Yeah, that's also listed by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur when he talks about ways and obstacles to devotional service. One of them is you're not tired, you got nothing else to do, but you just don't care. That's an obstacle, yes.
Thinking that the goal is insurmountable, too big for me.
Yes, that's a really nice and practical point you're making, Vittal, because oftentimes I'll look at something and see it in terms of its overall accomplishment, and I don't see the next step that I could possibly take right now, and therefore I become overwhelmed by it. And we've seen, yes, Charu. Other priorities in life. So there are many other things that you have to do, and they just really take up a lot of your time, right? Yes.
Association
Why don't you pass her the microphone? We'll keep that moving, yeah.
A lot of things we do with non-devotees, like we are having something, get-togethers with them, we just totally get distracted.
Association can be very disruptive in any sphere, in any discipline. People tend to make societies so they can stay together and keep focused on the discipline that they're trying to do. And yes,
Also social media, we're so glued to Facebook and all the other things we...
distractions,
Yeah.
many different kinds of distractions. Okay. So it's good to get these out in the open and understand that there will be obstacles as one is practicing anything. Now, when we're talking about practicing devotional service, we have an understanding that we have a relationship with Krishna, and it's very sweet. And we hear also that the practice of chanting Hare Krishna is extremely relishable for those who have a taste for it. So how to move forward and overcome the obstacles and become situated in the discipline that we need. Is it too warm in here? Is there any way to get more air? Okay, I think there's somebody coming to fix the thermostat on Monday or something like that. But if we can get more air in without getting a lot of noise. You all don't have anything against air, do you? I always vote for air when I get the chance. So one word that's very powerful one can think of is preparation. You will notice in the Lilamrita, which is a story about Prabhupada's life and how he achieved what he did, there's one chapter, one section of the book called A Lifetime in Preparation. Did anybody ever see that? A Lifetime in Preparation. This is a good phrase to keep in mind. A lifetime in preparation. Everyone please repeat. A lifetime in preparation. So, one may not be at this stage that one wants to be at, and it may seem like there's a lot of obstacles. But one can also always take shelter of preparation. You can consider that I'm in the stage of preparation. And also, it's good to keep in mind that we're moving in a certain direction in life. We will end up somewhere. Children don't know this. They just say, oh, I want to play all day. But parents have to say, but you have to do a few things, otherwise you're going to end up living on the street. You'll end up working in a car wash. No offense, I love car washes, but... So preparation is important, and our preparation determines our destination. Our preparation determines our destination. So we have to see, how are we preparing ourselves? What kinds of things are we taking into account? And in one of the famous verses of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Brahma talks about there are 3 areas that we need to prepare, especially. And one of them is the heart. The heart is the center of emotion. In fact, the Shastra says, Keshavgra shatabhagasya shadam sha shadrishatmakaha jiva suksha swarupoyam sankatito hichitkanaha. That particle of consciousness resides within the heart of the living entity. This is the center of our consciousness, actually. So it's recommended that we take time to cultivate the heart. The heart must be prepared for bhakti. So that's one area that needs to be prepared, and one can consciously prepare the heart. 2 other areas. So the verse says, Hridvagva purvir. So the other thing is vak, which means your speech. Your speech needs to be prepared. And this is something practical that everyone can actually work on. You can prepare your speech in such a way that it elevates you to a higher consciousness. It brings you to the goal of Krishna consciousness. something that you can do. And vapu means the body. So Lord Brahma mentions these three things, Hridvagvapurvir Viridam Namaste. He said these three items, the heart, the speech, and the body, should be used to offer submissive prayers to the Lord, to Krishna. And actually, after much evolution, it may be a little too much activity back there. There's a playroom, I think, in the back. So if anybody has any sponsorship here for these two really beautiful characters. So I was saying, Lord Brahma is recommending that we cultivate or prepare these three areas very carefully, and that we remember that whatever preparation we're making now will determine our destination. And we do have a destination. I know what I was saying. Children. It's often they want to play, and parents have to give them some direction. So we also have to apply some discipline, some direction, and be in the preparatory mode. So there's ways in which, even though I may not be at the level that I'm eager to achieve right now, if I take shelter of preparation and think I'm in a stage of preparation towards the destination, then we can take each day as a day to prepare our heart, our words, and our body to come to the stage of bhakti, or feelings of devotional service for Krishna. There's a few ways, practical ways in which in Shastra, I recently saw some writings. One of them is from the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in this third canto, chapter 1, text number 17, it is mentioned that Vidura, the great soul Vidura, who's a pure devotee, considered himself to be unqualified. And here's the statement that I extracted from Prabhupada's purport. Vidura considered himself less pious, and therefore he decided to travel to all the great places of pilgrimage in the world in order to achieve greater piety and advance nearer the Lord. At that time, Lord Krishna was personally present in the world, and Vidura could have at once approached him directly, but he did not do so because he was not sufficiently free from sin. One cannot be 100% devoted to the Lord unless and until he is completely free from all effects of sin. Vidura was conscious that by the association of the diplomatic, Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, he had lost his piety and was therefore not fit to associate at once with the Lord. You mentioned association, right? There's a way in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when asked about who is a devotee, said, Asat Sangha Tyag E Vaishnavachar. Said, a devotee is one who avoids bad association. So that's very important. And also significant in the mode of preparation. Vidura, although Krishna was present on the planet, considered himself not even worthy of approaching Krishna at that time. He needed more purification. And in the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, there's a verse in which Krishna says, Yesham tvanta katam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva mohanir mukta bhajanti mam dradavrataha. Unless one has become free from reactions to previous bad work, and has purified oneself, then one can't work with determination in devotional service. So Vidura considered himself like that. And actually those who are advancing in devotional service have this inclination to become more purified. So in this case, Vidura says that he's going to go on pilgrimage to some holy places in order to prepare himself, to prepare his heart, his speech, and his body to perform devotional service. Preparation mode. Vidura is going on pilgrimage. This is a kind of preparation. You go to a sacred place, like this temple is a sacred place. So you come here, and in the process of coming here, you get association, you hear, you chant, you take prasadam. All these things actually purify the body, the mind, and the words. And so, being in this frame of mind that I need to find the ways in which I can be purified, be constantly in contact with devotees, and preparing my heart is very important for advancement in devotional service. The next citation comes from the 3rd canto, 2nd chapter, 6th verse. An excerpt from Prabhupada's purport. Out of them, some may be influenced by the association of pure devotees and thus get the chance to execute devotional service by attainment of taste. This taste is the seed of devotional service. And one who is fortunate enough to have received such a seed is advised to sow it in the core of his heart. As one cultivates a seed by pouring water on it to fructify it, the seed of devotional service sown in the heart of the devotee may be cultured by pouring water in the form of hearing and chanting of the holy name and pastimes of the Lord. So this metaphor you'll find throughout the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that the seed of bhakti is in the heart, and it must be watered. And the watering process means hearing. Now, if one hears every day, or we can say this, that any time that you see someone who's advanced in spiritual life, who speaks about Krishna, acts for Krishna, thinks about Krishna, if you follow back their progress in life, you'll see that they have spent time hearing about Krishna, with no exception. Those who advance in spiritual life hear about Krishna. And it doesn't matter what position they're in. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu liked this idea so much from the Shastra that in a very famous conversation that he had with the great devotee Ramananda Roy, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Ramananda Roy to tell him what is the most important process in spiritual life, and Ramananda Roy began by saying Varnashram. You have to follow the Varnashram system. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, that is external. And then Ramananda Roy said, giving up the Varnashram, taking sannyas, and going beyond that. He said, that is external. Even he considered external sarva dharman parityaja, where Krishna says, abandon all varieties of religion, just surrender unto me. He said, say something more. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard Ramananda Roy say, Jnane prayasam udapasya namante eva jivanti sanmukharidham bhavadiya vartam stane stita shutigatam tanuvan manobir hridvagbabhur. I'm sorry, I diverted into another verse. I'm sorry? Ye prayaso jita jito pyasitais trilokyam. This compact verse says a lot. It was spoken by Lord Brahma. And Brahma says that one should give up the process of speculation to try to understand the Supreme. And one should engage in oneself in hearing in the association of devotees. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur described the entire system of parampara, spiritual masters and disciples, as a line of submissive hearers. The ears are so attuned in human life that by hearing the transcendental sound vibration, a complete transformation can take place within the heart of the listener. So, in preparation for advanced devotional service, in preparation for fixing the mind, in preparation for being able to go back home, back to Godhead, in preparation for having a taste for hearing, before one can even do that, one has to put oneself in front of transcendental sound vibration and regularly hear. And then one will definitely be purified. But one thing you have to do is get yourself there. Somehow or other organize your life around this kind of preparation, that you have an opportunity to hear. Even if the mind has objections, just go methodically forward in organizing your life in such a way that you'll have contact with hearing about Krishna. Because this is the ultimate medicine. And it clears the mist and fog which covers over our original consciousness. And the original statements in the Vedanta Sutra, which is a compilation of the most important statements in the Vedas, says, Anavriti Shabdat, Anavriti Shabdat. That by sound, transcendental sound, one will become uncovered and experience one's real life. So in a lifetime of preparation, which is what we're engaged in spiritual life, a lifetime of preparation, give yourself at least one life. Don't be too impatient, but give yourself a lifetime. Also considering that I've experimented in many other species of life. For those of you who are rich, you've been poor before. For those of you who are poor and can't find any money any which way right now, you've been rich before. For those who are humans, they've also experienced other types of bodies as birds and animals and so forth. That's a fact. Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavan Jiva. The living entity wanders. Where does he wander? Through various bodies, and Krishna describes that process in the Bhagavad Gita. From one species to another, from one planet to another, it's a process of wandering. So once one comes to the human form of life, the opportunity is there to use this as a preparation, one whole lifetime, by hearing about Krishna. What are some of the ways that you can hear that changes everything? I was reading last night how Prabhupada had come to London. The devotees, there were 3 couples that came to London in order to open up a Krishna consciousness center. All 3 of them were Grihastas, Grihasta couple. Well, they had to be couples. There were 3 Grihasta couples. It was Gurudas and Jamuna, Mukunda and Janaki, and Shamasundar and Malati. These 3. They had flown across from the United States to London, and they had nowhere to stay. They had no money to speak of. They had to, when they went across the ocean, they had to show at the border that they had some money. So one couple would go over and they would show them the money, and then they'd mail it back. And the next couple would take it and show it at the border, and they'd mail it back to the next couple, just so they could get in. That's how little resources the devotees had at the time. And at one point, Malati and her family were living in somebody's garage, and their residence was a very large appliance box. Someone had purchased a refrigerator, and then they made a cutout. Did you ever do that as a kid? You get a big box like that, and you can play in the box? Well, they lived in the box. That's what they did when they first got there. In any case, they were just depending on Krishna, and when Prabhupada came after many months to London, because they didn't have a place for him to stay, but miracles happened. They met the Beatles, and John Lennon offered them to stay at his mansion at Tittenhurst, which was established in 1778. And that manor is famous, actually, all over England as having more variety of trees and gardens than any other place. And it had to have 17 gardeners to just maintain the grounds in its heyday. And there was a servants' quarters, and the servants' quarters was fairly large. So the devotees were staying there. John Lennon invited him to stay there in exchange for some work that some of the devotees were doing on the rest of the house. And when Prabhupada came, they had a room for him there. And the devotees described how when Prabhupada arrived, he would get up at 1 o'clock in the morning and he would work on his book, on his translations. He was writing Krishna book at the time. And he would hear and chant all day. Sometimes he would sing bhajans and play the harmonium. And Jamuna especially was very much drawn to the singing. When she wasn't cooking, she'd come over to the hallway to listen to Prabhupada singing. And then devotees had the great idea to start recording whatever he was singing. But they described how all day long, at intervals between the other services he was doing, he would be chanting japa, and then he would sing some bhajans. And then Prabhupada chanted 1 chapter of Bhagavad Gita every day. As long as he was there, the devotees observed that every day he would chant at least 1 chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada said, this chanting of 1 chapter of Bhagavad Gita a day transforms any place into a holy place, into a sacred place. Consider that. Krishna spoke directly the Bhagavad Gita. Now, there's something special about that. This is a kind of preparation that one can take up in one's life, that every day where I am, I will transform my life, my consciousness, my heart, my speech, my body, and the place I live by reciting a chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Or if you can't do that, if you can take one step and do 1 shloka. In fact, that comes out in the Gita Mahatmya, that if you can't do 1 chapter, at least you can do 1 verse. And if you can't do 1 verse, you can do a half a verse. If you can't do a half a verse, at least you can do 1 word. Even that is beneficial, because this preparation is so powerful. But you can see that someone who is advanced in devotional service has developed this momentum of hearing and chanting over a period of a day. He or she goes through various cycles of hearing and chanting. And this is the kind of preparation that brings us to taste for the holy name, that purifies the consciousness, the mind, and the words, and so forth. And the third section that I'll read is 3.4.28, where Prabhupada writes, both the Vrishnis and Bojas were directly dispatched because they had no attraction for material planets. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also suggests that according to the Amara Kosh dictionary, Akriti also means signal. Lord Krishna ordered Uddhava by signal to go to Badarik Ashram after his departure, and Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead, or the abode of the Lord. That was the cause of his remaining alone, even after the departure of the Lord from the face of the earth. So the implication here is that if one can get some instruction coming through the chain of disciplic succession for some service, this is the other kind of preparation that one can make in one's life for going back home, back to Godhead. Because in the course of doing one's service, one will be engaging one's body, mind, and words naturally in things that we're already used to. For instance, if somebody has a service of cooking, what are some of the ways in which you have to use your senses in order to finish cooking for the Lord?
use your eyes to look
How
at
do
the
you have to
ingredients.
use your eyes? You mean
To look at the ingredients and make sure
Yeah.
that they are right, they're not rotten, and they are clean, and you're picking up the right ingredients, like salt versus sugar, like
Okay.
that. Yeah.
all right? Good. What else?
Touch. You have to touch the food and see if it is properly cooked or not. Since we
Like what?
like rice, you take a look at the rice and see if the grain has really been properly cooked or not.
Okay. Yes.
You have to use your mind to judge the quantities that you're putting, like salt or pepper, or so that the taste actually comes to the right expectation.
Nice. Anything else?
Some experts can sense by smell of the food. Or at least for burning, I can do, and if it is getting
You know
burned.
it's burning. It's a little late, right? Once it's burning. Yeah, there's a way in which cooking engages all the senses in Krishna service. And by thinking of Krishna as one's cooking, and that's natural because you're cooking for Krishna, then the mind becomes purified and all the senses are engaged. And if this is a service that you're doing, then you become purified. So this is one of the great benefits of bhakti. We're not teaching renunciation or vairagya, but we're teaching yukta vairagya. And this is very practical because there's a way in which in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna describes who's eligible for the path of bhakti. He says some people are nirvinanam, which means they're completely disgusted with the material world. They're qualified for gyan, because they want to give up their personal existence and merge into the existence of the Lord. And then there's some who are nirvinam, which means they're not disgusted with the material world at all. They still think it's a place of great opportunity. And they're qualified for the path of karma. But those who have awakened some taste for hearing about Krishna and who are neither fully disgusted with the material world or attracted to the material world are qualified for bhakti. And those who come to the path of bhakti can then engage in a kind of renunciation, which is very practical, which means to do everything for Krishna. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yat karoshi yat ashnasi, yat johosi dadasi yat tapasyasi kontiya tat kurushva madarpanam. That whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer and give away, you should do as an offering unto me. And this is the process for purifying all the senses. If one gives up something that could be used in Krishna service out of repulsion, and doesn't use it, then this is called false renunciation. Everything that can be used in Krishna service should be used. And if one finds oneself entangled in the world, which is altogether possible, is it? It's a complex place, right? We come out into the world, there's all kinds of extenuating circumstances that we think we didn't ask for, but we may have gotten ourselves into. According to the Shastra, this is the way in which we've been entangled for a long time. The way out is to begin to connect everything to the service of Krishna and to begin to prepare oneself for advancing in spiritual life. I talked to a friend recently who's a nice devotee, an advanced devotee, and he had a very successful business for a long time. And he just retired from the business because he is advanced and he has this sense that time to really put my focus on Krishna consciousness. And from his lifestyle, I can gather that he has enough money. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I didn't, pry or anything like that, but I think he's got enough money. And when we were talking the other day, he told me, in fact, he said, "What do you recommend I do in the afternoons, because he was so engaged. Business means busyness. That's what business means, busyness. It means you got to stay busy all day, selling products, keeping accounts, thinking about how to keep the business going, how to get more business and so forth, taking care of customers. There's a lot that goes into business, right? She's studying, things like that. So once you stop, and I noticed from talking to him, he's a good devotee. He's been doing japa every morning for his whole life. Gets up early and chants very serious japa. But now he stopped doing his business in the afternoon. He said, now what do I do? He said, because in the morning I can do my japa, I can hear Srimad Bhagavatam, but in the afternoon the mode of passion comes in. And it's really, really hard just to pick up a book and read all day, unless you're in a very, special place and circumstance, and you've cultivated that for a long time. And so what do you do? What do you do the rest of the day? He was asking. So what do you do? You hear, but that might be hard also, because, I got to go somewhere. I got to do something, right? This is the mode of passion. It makes you want to move on. Have you ever noticed it's easier to hear and chant in the morning? Yes. And in the afternoon, it's like, get that way. It's hard to move. So what do you do about it? I'm asking. Go ahead. Shamalangi, tell us what to do.
Service in the temple.
What kind of service?
Rajbhog, cooking Rajbhog.
Did you cook the Rajbhog? And what was your experience with that?
It's nice. I mean, you spend your hours, like 2 hours maybe it'll take, and it's nice. Ultimately, the food is offered to the Lord, so it's a good.
And you have to get ready for it.
Yeah.
Before you go in the kitchen, you have to be clean. Before in the kitchen, to cook anything, you have to chant 16 rounds. You can't cook without chanting 16 rounds. And then the cooking, you're thinking
what to make.
You're engaged, all your hands, everything, right? As we talked about before with cooking, right? What other ways in the afternoon when the mode of passion moves in, what to do?
You can call a devotee and talk.
And you have a lot of experience with that, right? Because I find out from people all over the world that Shraddha is, we have a class with her. You stay in touch with people and you talk about Krishna consciousness, right?
That's true.
Okay, nice. What else? Vittal. Oh, go ahead. Mukharvin, you got the mic. Go ahead.
Go out for book distribution.
Book distribution. Yeah, tell us about that.
Just take some books and the best place. Choose the best place where we can meet with the people. Maybe in downtown area, or maybe it's near library, or which is open, or like in some plaza, or some shopping mall, and.
You like it?
Yeah, it's the best thing.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. Vittal?
He already covered it.
Say more about it, because you have a taste for it.
Trying to.
Yeah?
Maybe go door to door. Actually, it's a very fascinating experience. Sometimes you realize that how boring lives people lead. And actually, basically, if there is no goal, like after some time, whatever amount of sense gratification you get in, actually it just doesn't give you a taste. You realize that they're all talking about some sport or some mundane thing. So actually you feel fortunate that having a goal, it will give you some objective and life is not boring.
And it's kind of exciting too, isn't it? You said fascinating, and I think when you go out to teach Krishna consciousness in public, you don't know what's going to happen next. That's pretty exciting. You knock on somebody's door and think, who's going to open? So when you knock on the door, generally, what do? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. All you can do is pray and wait for somebody to open the door. And then it's very engaging talking to people. Because, yes, Malini, please, tell us more.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So about the mode of passion, we were talking about it, and going on book distribution, how it helps. I also heard from a brahmachari devotee who came from Radha Gopinath, and I asked him that that we do book distribution here, and do you think we should engage everybody in this temple for book distribution? And he said, definitely yes. He said that only those devotees who are in a situation where they can constantly hear and chant, they can actually sit down and do bhajan. But those devotees who are not in the stage of hearing and chanting 24 hours a day, they should have all their senses engaged in some service. And book distribution is that kind of service where your mind is focused and you have to use your legs and hands to walk and to carry books. And then you have to use your tongue to speak about Krishna. And you have to hear what they are saying so that you can actually respond to their questions. So all of your senses are engaged simultaneously, focused on one pointed attention, that is to actually deliver the message of Krishna to somebody else.
So is this a kind of yoga?
Yes, yes. And initially when you said mode of passion, when we first go out on first door, when we knock, we are super excited that so much of passion initially comes out. You go ahead, you explain everything about Chaitanya Charitamrita and everything, and that person is from Bengal, and you think that, oh, definitely he will take Chaitanya Charitamrita. You're so excited, you're explaining everything, and then in spite of your half an hour explanation or something, that person doesn't take the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So actually, at that time, all the passion goes away, and then you take shelter of the holy name and Krishna. So you go down from the mode of passion and you completely surrender into Krishna. Like next door you go Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And you knock the door, the person half opens the door, and from the peephole looks at us and doubtingly opens the door, and we say, we have got Chaitanya Charitamrita said, and that person says, okay, I'll take it. Just in 1 second. So when mode of passion is there, you exhaust everything and then you depend on Krishna, go back to goodness. So you can experience all kinds of modes in book distribution.
So this is description of Yukta Vairagya. Pass the microphone back to your husband. We'd like to hear about teaching. How that we're talking about ways to engage all the senses. We're hearing from the Shastra about how one must prepare one's heart, one's speech, one's body to be engaged in Krishna consciousness, the purifying effects. We talked about how sometimes it's very difficult to overcome the mode of passion, to engage in service. And we talked about Yukta Vairagya and how doing things which are in relationship with Krishna, serving Krishna. And you've been teaching Krishna consciousness in a systematic way to hundreds of devotees over many, many years. And what's your experience with the process of teaching Krishna consciousness and how it engages your senses?
First of all, I would like to thank you for engaging me in that service, and I'm deeply grateful to you. And whatever little or insignificant we have done is because of your blessings and mercy, so thank you. One thing that helps is there is not much of physical activity in teaching, so if you have some physical activity, for example, washing pots in the kitchen, or having some sort of physical activity to offset your mental exertion in teaching, or mental pleasure that you get in teaching, let's put it that way, it will be nice. But it's a beautiful service because your mind has to think deeper, and you have to mentally be prepared to answer questions and see what can be possibly the devotees might ask. And more importantly, do you really have that taste? Are you cultivating it? If you're not, then you're definitely not going to give it to others. So it was, and more often than not, Prabhuji, it's because of the deadlines, you are forced to engage your senses sometimes, and it has to have certain amount of discipline to kind of do that. And I'm grateful that sometimes when I don't have the taste because of the deadline, I still do it.
You still have to do it. This is a nice kind of preparation to advance in Krishna consciousness if you teach it to others. If you're parents and you're regularly teaching to your children certain sections of the Bhagavad Gita or Krishna book, If you're in a classroom setting, you have to prepare yourself. And in that way, you're always engaging your mind, body, speech. Someone told me the other day, I think it was Madhavananda Prabhu, while we were in Jagannath Puri, that Prabhupada had exalted the process of preparation for teaching Krishna consciousness and said 15 minutes of preparation to speak about Krishna and teach is worth 2 hours of personal reading. You get so much more deeper into the subject matter. Harivamsha.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu, for a wonderful class. I have 2 points to make. There may be devotees who have organizational abilities to organize, structure things, and that uses a lot of passion. So they can always go back to the existing structure and refine it more. And that takes a lot of thinking, a lot of passion, a lot of calling, and a lot of talking with the people. So that is one way I found it useful. Another point which I wanted to make, that this mode of passion can be overcome by the mode of goodness right at the beginning of the day where you plan out activities. Even though if you have to engage into reading, which may not appear to be passion, which is not exactly engaging your mode of passion, but right in the beginning of the day you plan out, I will read at this particular point of time and I've allotted this for my study. That goodness right in the beginning actually overcomes, and you just pass through that. So that has helped me.
That goes along with our mantra for the day, which is your preparation determines your destination. Whatever you're preparing for now is where you're destined to go tomorrow and the next day. So keep that in mind, that you may not be at any perfected stage right now, but if you take shelter of preparation and you prepare to go to that place, then forces that were unseen previously will come to your aid. The main force is Krishna. Because as he says in the Bhagavad Gita, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. When I see someone sincerely trying, Krishna says in essence in the Bhagavad Gita, trying to worship me, preparing to improve oneself in devotional service, then I give the intelligence from within the heart how to make advancement in devotional service. And I like your point about preparing in the morning for the rest of the day. If you have a strong morning program, then you won't be overcome as much in the afternoon and evening when the heavier modes set in. So plan ahead. I had a friend who has 2 children. They're probably all grown up now. And he told me once when they were young, he said, I have to wake up before they do and set the law of the house before they get up. Otherwise, if they get up before me, they take over and I never get it back the rest of the day. It's just finished. And that was Pushpadanta. He told me that. And I was thinking how that correlates with what you were saying, Harivamsha, but you start early with a plan. We have this other mantra we mentioned, never greet the dawn without a map. Don't wake up idly and think, what do you want to do now? And the mind says, I don't know, what do you want to do? Because it'll think up, idle mind is the devil's workshop. Actually, it says idle hands are a devil's workshop, but idle any senses are a devil's workshop. So if you have a plan ahead of time, and this is this is how to take shelter of preparation, you can tell your mind and senses, I'm in preparation mode, I'm getting ready for something in the future. So now I'm going to do this. I'm going to be preparing. Shraddha, you have some internet news coming in.
This is from Bhakta Raphael.
Oh, Bhakta Raphael, nice.
And he's actually talking about when you are deep into the mode of passion, when you're completely caught. So he says you go and do some exercise, but then take your iPod with you and have a Srila Prabhupada lecture running on it, and then do your exercise.
Okay, that's a good idea, and that goes to the plan we had discussed of always keeping yourself in transcendental sound vibration. So it's you get out and move, but you listen as you're going. You can listen to a lecture. This is one of the great benedictions of modern technology, is that you can actually listen 24 hours a day to Krishna consciousness. We were visiting this wonderful family in Bombay the other day, and we got invited to their house. It was just a nice circumstance because we were in Puri and we had this long flight to take from Bombay all the way to New Jersey and then to San Francisco. I think it's about, including stopovers, it was about 28 hours of flying. What to speak of, transportation in between Puri, Bhubaneswar, and then Bombay, right? So anyway, Madhavananda was kind enough, our host in Jagannath Puri, to connect us to this family in Bombay. The husband's name is Narottam. And what an extraordinary family. But it just turned out, he's a disciple of Indradyumna Maharaj, right? So it turned out that the second we got there, Indradyumna Maharaj and Bhattahari also showed up at the same time. In fact, their car was just pulling up in front of their house the same time we were, like Krishna's arrangement and so forth. And we went in their house. They fed us wonderful prasadam. And he has an altar with many shalagram shilas on it that he takes care of meticulously and so forth. And I noticed over on the side of the altar there's this little box. You could barely hear it in the rest of the house, but when you get up close to the altar, the little box, out of this little box coming, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And I was thinking how through technology the vibration can always be going on nowadays. We can't take that for granted. It's part of the deal with the short life and everything we have now. Short life and many disadvantages. It says in the Shastra that there's one great advantage, and that is if you chant Hare Krishna. But there's another advantage. The technology can help you do that, so you have to take advantage of that. So, Bhakta Raphael's suggestion, always have a way to stay connected to the sound vibration. In your car, you can also listen, right? And that's one of the best places. You had a point, Rick. Yeah.
For the mode of passion, especially for your friend who is so good in Krishna consciousness, people like that, I think Vaishnava care is a very good option. If you're really free in the afternoon, and if there are some Vaishnavas who really need care, who have been senior devotees all their life, but now they can't speak, or they are in some mental situation or physical condition, you can actually go and chant and sing with them. They really feel very, very, very happy, and they just become so natural when you go and sing for them. Also, Vaishnavas who are one of us might be having some family problem and somebody is sick, we can help each other out in the mode of passion, because we are always want to serve somebody or the other. Why not serve Vaishnavas and senior people who are senior Vaishnavas who cannot do it because of physical limitations?
Very nice points. In fact, yes, this is a very important service. We were just talking to the devotees in Toronto recently, and they set up a Vaishnavas care program. You just came from Toronto. Ah, there it is. This wasn't planned. Yeah, they have something like 50 or 60 devotees that volunteered to help out. And anytime any of the Vaishnavas needs anything or is incapacitated for any reason, and it happens, then the devotees have this very organized system where they can immediately mobilize someone to go and take care of the devotees. And this is extremely important service, and one that is very engaging. In fact, one of the ways in which to come out of depression is to think about how to serve others, how to do good for others. So when it's in relationship to serving others, especially taking care of those in the Vaishnava community, then this is very powerful yukta vairagya. You can stay engaged in this way. Very good. Thank you. Was there anything else that came in from this side? Okay. So Did you have another point? Yes.
Thinking, he can keep a cow, like, and take care of a cow, or even like gardening. I've heard even you do gardening. That is also quite engaging.
It is, yes. If you grow things for Krishna, if you grow a garden, which is highly recommended, you can grow flowers in your yard. You can get a cow. That's a really big commitment. It's a lifetime commitment to have cow and take care of a cow. You think about that one really carefully, because it means it's practically, it is. It's like having a child. You want to think about it that many times. But it is very engaging. I had a godbrother who was taking care of cows, and I asked how it was going. He said, changed my whole life. It slowed me down to the pace of the cow. I have to be there for the cow all the time. And there's a way in which you really get connected to the earth. And by serving Mother Cow also, one realizes unlimited benefits, spiritual benefits. Yes, Rajesh.
Just wanted to add about the cow. My sister has a cow and she was sick when I went to India, and she said she was feeling as, its baby is sick. And I could see, she said, my cow nodded like this, I'm not feeling well. The way she was explaining to me, it seems like, beyond my comprehension, that how closely you get connected with cow. So as you rightly said, it's just like taking care about your baby. So
yes. So we've mentioned a few things. I wanted to talk to one of the pot washers. Are any of the devotees who wash pots in here? Prashant washes pots. Let's hear a few comments about your service, washing pots, which...
I would say it's definitely, hard work. By the time I do the dishes, right, and I go home, I get very sound sleep. So that's...
If you have insomnia, this is...
But what I also, observed is I think it gives you some, equal perspective of how to treat, devotees and learn like all the good things from them. That is the first thing that I personally felt. So, it's you have to be patient with the way you deal with devotees, right? Like some devotees want like extra food, extra stuff, right? You cannot just be blunt. So you have to really be polite, and you can be polite if you learn the real way, right? That's other stuff that I learned.
Just see, there's a lot more to pot washing than one might think. Yeah. And everyone should try it. Yes, Sushil.
I like to call it as a heart cleanser when you're washing the pots. Especially there are some pots which are very tough, and you are determined to clean them, not leave the residue behind. So you are at the job, doing it, want to scrub it clean, and finally it comes out, but it does take a time. I know Sri Ram Prabhu in there, and they are constantly scrubbing pots. And it's like, it's good to see that, they are paving the way for someone like me to come in and follow on their path and help them wash more pots. So it's
nice points.
Heart cleanser.
And I like your metaphor about cleansing the pot is like cleansing your heart. And it takes scrubbing. And this is something that Prabhupada taught the devotees early on when he taught them about cooking. Cooking means cleaning, he said. And pots get dirty. And there's an old adage that a Brahmin is someone who leaves a place cleaner than when he or she found it. This is a practice. But coming in to clean pots means, first of all, you're cleaning Krishna's pots. And second of all, as you scrub the pot, then your heart gets cleaner. It's a very practical kind of service. And you can get into a kind of samadhi if you go in the kitchen and you volunteer for some service like this, scrubbing pots, or doing some work where you're cutting up vegetables and things like that. You'll feel that you're completely connected to Krishna because it's yukta vairagya. It's renunciation by connection to Krishna's service. And then the senses actually become satisfied. And it's counterintuitive because oftentimes people think, well, that's the last thing I'd ever want to do is wash pots. I mean, who wants to get a job, if you go to a mixer somewhere and people say, well, what do you do? And he says, I wash pots. Everyone wants to have some, highfalutin kind of an occupation. In fact, you should try that when you go out and talk to people. Say, what do you do? It's like, I'm a pot washer. But this kind of position, very menial service, where you're doing something to clean Krishna's temple, is extremely satisfying, and it purifies the heart. This is the benefit of bhakti. All these kinds of engagements one can take up. And the community has a center so everyone can come in and take some service very, very diligently and prepare themselves. Now, as you do this kind of service, you'll notice that the heart does become cleansed. There's a famous verse in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam in which Sutta Goswami says, Shushu Shro Sharadhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Seveya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevana. When you render this kind of great service, it means you're serving for a purpose. You're serving under someone who's of spiritual significance, coming through the line of disciplic succession. Then your heart gets purified and you'll develop a desire to hear and chant. It's an upward spiral in that you're serving and then you get more desire to hear, and as you hear, you get more desire to serve. And it goes on like that in the process of purification. So even the great devotees like Vidura, we see that they use their lifetime in preparation. I read to you earlier about how Vidura was living at home, Krishna was on the planet, and when he ran into some discord in his own house, he had the idea, let me go out and get purified. And he didn't even go to visit Krishna first. He just went to all the holy places because he thought, I'm not ready yet, I have to prepare myself. So one should always be in this mode of preparation and take as signs from this world the kinds of discords that take place, an impetus to prepare oneself for leaving the world. Don't think that I'll make some comfortable arrangement here. Think I'll prepare myself to leave. And also keep in mind the fact that the earlier one starts preparing, the better chance one has, because it's like an airplane taking off on a runway. You need a real good running start. If the plane's going too slow, he has to, at the end of the runway, slam on his brakes and he can't take off. So try to get a running start and use every day as a preparation for the liftoff. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitaitan brahma bhuya yakalpate. This verse in the Bhagavad Gita always reminds me of an airplane taking off. And sometimes in San Francisco, when you take off, you have to rise above the fog, because oftentimes it's fogged in at the San Francisco airport, and the plane has to lift up go above the fog. So in this verse, Krishna says, Mam chayo, to me, Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. If you give this kind of dedicated preparation and attention to my service, sagunan samatitaitan. Atitya means to rise above. So he said, you will take off and rise above the modes of material nature by that kind of preparation. Brahma bhuya yakalpate. And then you'll come to this spiritual position where you're above the modes of material nature and fully engage in devotional service. How is everybody now? Is he okay? All right. Not too warm? Okay, now we'll take a few reflections. Yes. Or a question.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I had a question. I notice sometimes that listening is not part of the program.
What is it?
Listening may not be part of a devotee's program, or it may not be the thing that they enjoy. Is listening mandatory? Could I do just service, do some chanting, and keep advancing?
Without hearing, then there's a way in which one forgets about why one's serving. So Shravanam, or hearing, is the beginning of the chain and the impetus to serve. However, there are some people that like to be in that service mode all the time. But the Bhagavatam says that unless that's bringing you to the position of being interested in hearing, then you're wasting your time. Shrama eva hi kevalam. In other words, the kind of work we're doing in this world, whatever activity we're doing in this world, should lead us to this point where the heart becomes prepared to hear, where it's interested in hearing. So there is a case for when you come to Krishna consciousness, you may be motivated to do certain kind of service, like wash pots. They put me in the pot room as soon as I joined. And it was the happiest days of my life. I'd like to go back to those sometimes. And just wash pots. And you know, your main focus is getting that little black spot off that big pot. And you don't care about anything else right then. But then there's a way that the heart becomes purified. And when the heart becomes purified, the natural result is that you want to hear about Krishna. It's living in the temple atmosphere or living in the association of devotees that creates that kind of thing. There's a story about the gardener at the mutt of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur named Gopal, who was very advanced. And mostly he did gardening all day. And he was also an avid hearer. He used to come in here, but he wasn't a scholar. Many of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples were great scholars. They came from very high Brahmin families and they knew Sanskrit and very bright. And he would engage them in all kinds of intellectual activities, like learning the intricacies of various philosophies so they could represent them through the Nadia Prakash and the other magazines they were putting out, and in public assemblies and essays and things like that, to inform people of the proper Siddhanta. But there are others who just worked. And there have been some, great souls. Remember, Jayananda was at our temple in San Francisco when I first joined. He was like the organizer of Rath Yatra. He was the temple commander and sort of the bhakta leader all in one. And he was always working hard. Always had black stuff on his hands from fixing things, doing stuff like that. And he had an intense taste for hearing and chanting. You'd see him when he'd chant japa, he'd very concentrated. He was getting a taste. So generally one leads to the other, but for a balanced diet in Krishna consciousness, part of one's preparation should always be hearing something.
So the other thing I wanted to ask with relation to hearing is, when we hear, we cannot absorb the Shastra. The Shastra is something we focus on and try to by heart on a daily basis, like a shloka a day or something. But when we hear, we absorb more of the message and less of the Shastra. How important is the Shastra part?
Well, it's all important, and it depends on our motivation for hearing and studying. If I'm studying with the idea that I'm going to dazzle people by my Shastric knowledge, this is one kind of cultivation that's not as beneficial as if one's sincerely hearing just to please Krishna or the spiritual master. Then there's a way in which one's very open. Exposure to the Shastra, though, can be underestimated. It's like radiation. You can't really see it, but it actually goes in. And repeated exposure to hearing the Bhagavatam has a dramatic effect on the heart, really changes. People who come and they sit and listen to the Bhagavatam on a regular basis then begin to understand it. And then after some time, they actually develop a taste for it. So repeated hearing, even if one doesn't have a taste for it, is a mode of preparation that one should take up when one understands that this is coming as a prescription from an infallible source, that it works. Take it as medicine. In the beginning, when you have a disease and you're given medicine by the doctor, you may just trust, well, I don't know what's in the medicine, I don't know what kind of research went into this exactly, but I do trust the doctor, and other people said they got better, so I'm going to take the full course. And you go ahead and take it. Kind of a preparation for becoming healthy. So whatever we're preparing for now is developing our future. If we keep that in mind, whatever taste we don't have now, we will have later if we just take shelter of the preparation process. Now, one thing that one can do every day is to chant from one's heart the holy names of Krishna, because all of Krishna's energies are in Krishna's names. In fact, Krishna is the same as his name. And if one simply repeats the name of Krishna and tries to hear one's own sincerity while chanting, then there will be a dramatic effect. Now, meditation means to think of one thing and nothing else. What does it mean, meditation? Yeah, how often do we get the luxury during the day to actually focus on one thing and nothing else? How often throughout the day? 1/14 of a second, says Harivamsha. So it's actually a luxury. Give yourself this luxury every day to think of one thing and nothing else. Now, if you're going to think of one thing and nothing else, what one thing would you think of? Huh? Money? Facebook? What did you say? I didn't hear what you said. Krishna. Okay, why would you do that? Why, if you were going to focus on one thing and nothing else, why would you focus on Krishna? And while you're thinking of the answer, I'd like to welcome our online audience. Everyone please say Haribol. Thank you very much for joining us from wherever you are. We're very happy to be mystically connected to you through this technology and to go on hearing and chanting with you. So why would you think of Krishna and nothing else? What would be the reason for that? Yes? Better give him the microphone because this is going to be profound.
I don't remember the exact verse, but in Bhagavad Gita there is one verse which says that if you are in devotional service to Krishna, then you get all the results which you get from all other activities.
Okay, someone get him the Bhagavad Gita and turn to that page and hand it to him so he can record it in his memory from now on. And while you're handing it over, we'll chant the verse. Vedeshu yagyeshu tapassu chaiva naneshu yat punya palam pratishtam atyeti tat sarva idam vadidva yogi paramstanam upaiti chadyam. If one takes to the process of devotional service, especially as mentioned earlier in the chapter, thinking of Krishna and nothing else, then one gets the results of studying all the Vedas, performing all sacrifices, giving all kinds of charity, performing all kinds of tapasya. Anything else?
Philosophical and fruitive activities.
And performing all kinds of? Philosophical and fruitive activities.
Yes.
Save yourself the tuition of going to Stanford. Just by, so there is, according to Shastra, and we thank you very much for bringing this out, you must be reading the Gita regularly, for it to come right out in your mind that there's this verse, you know, that's very powerful. This is Krishna's mercy. This is the way we should always be thinking. So this is permission to every day give yourself this time to think of one thing and nothing else. And that one place to put one's mind is on Krishna. All the Shastras say it, so just believe it. Now, the best way to think of Krishna is to repeat his names. And Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What was the mantra for today? Your preparation? Your preparation determines your destination. So keep in mind that we're going somewhere, we're moving, but take charge of what you're preparing for. Get ready, ready your heart, ready your mind, and ready your body. You can do that by chanting Hare Krishna, by hearing from the scriptures. You can engage your body in washing pots. You can cook for Krishna. You can do business for Krishna. And your words, if you speak about Krishna and you chant Hare Krishna, and even when you can't chant Hare Krishna, you keep the mantra going in your mind, then the very presence of the holy name will purify your speech and your mind and your heart. So this is the preparatory process. This whole lifetime is a lifetime in preparation. Always remember that we're preparing for something that's so much greater than what we have in this world. Everything we have here is insignificant, and it'll be taken away from us. The only significance it has is when we actually engage it in the process of preparation, because your preparation determines your destination. So beware of what you're preparing yourself for, and follow the great masters of devotional service in their advice to use this mode of thinking, this mode of working in life and chanting Hare Krishna to prepare yourself for going back home, back to Godhead. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.